Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones. Today, we speak to a state senator from Monmouth County's 13th legislative district. It covers parts of the Jersey Shore. Senator Declan O'Scanlon is a vocal opponent of the governor's COVID mandate. So we're going to be talking to him about what Republicans are planning in the state Senate. First, longtime Jersey Shore Congressman Frank Pallone, who represents New Jersey's 6th congressional district, joins us now to talk about what's happening with infrastructure, the environment, and school funding. We're so happy to have him here. Congressman Frank Pallone, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Laura.
All right, well, we're in the middle of winter, so let's talk a little bit about power and winter weather issues. Now, you recently sent a letter to JCP&L asking about why it's been so many power outages in the Jersey Shore in recent weeks. So what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, that's part of what we've asked them in the letter is to tell us how many outages there have been, how long they are, where they've been. I mean, I'm certainly aware of ones that have occurred in Fairhaven, Rumson, Long Branch, Asbury Park, and just in the last few weeks, but I don't know the full extent of it. But from what I understand, a lot of this is that the substations have just not been upgraded and are failing. And so, JCP&L a few years ago said they were going to upgrade and spend all this money, to improve the substations and the distribution. And I don't think much of that, if any, was spent in Middlesex and Monmouth counties. This is mostly Monmouth County, though.
Yeah. Well, actually, I live in Hunterdon, and we have JCP&L, and I haven't had as many power outages as it seems since before Superstorm Sandy. It seems to be an issue, and it is JCP&L. But it's not happening with PSE&G?
No, PSE&G hasn't had the problem, and most of Middlesex County's PSE&G. So this was strictly to JCP&L. But also, a lot of these have been when there wasn't a storm. I mean, the one that took place in Long Branch the other night, it was a beautiful summer night. There was no wind, nothing. So that's why I worry when we actually have this blizzard coming.
Right. Well, what would you say to people, when these things happen, they get frustrated, should they call your office? Who do they call? Because you get the automated JCP&L, yeah, we received your message. Do you have advice for them or a message of, yeah, I'm on it, I'm trying to do what I can? What can you say?
Oh, they definitely should call JCP&L because that's all recorded. And I think the BPU, finds out about it as well. So, I mean, anybody can call me whenever they want, but I definitely think they should call JCP&L because they're the only one that's going to fix it. But we know that a lot of money was spent in upgrading these substations and facilities further north, like in, Essex County and places further north, but they don't seem to have spent much, if any, money here.
All right. Well, hopefully keep us up to date on what you hear back from JCP&L. I want to switch a little bit to, one of the things our congressional representatives do in Washington is they're working to get federal money sent home. So one of the latest pieces of money that we were able to receive were schools and library here in New Jersey are going to receive over $4 million, and it's part of an emergency fund. So can you talk a little bit about what that money is to be used for?
Well, there's about 1.7 million so far that's been received in our state. But this is what we call the Emergency Connectivity Fund. It was passed, came out of my committee as part of the American Rescue Plan that was passed early last year. And it was because of the fact that during COVID, a lot of kids were not in school. And they were either using libraries or they were at home. And the idea is to try to make the schools and the libraries connect to the kids at home so they can have internet service.
Well, that is one of the, positive, negative, positive things that did come out of COVID was having that ability to go virtual or to go remote, even for snowstorms. So when that happens, students don't lose that time. But if they don't have the connectivity, that is a real issue. So you are hoping
And Laura, what it is? We just have this big digital divide in our state and all out around the country where, a lot of people that are low income either can't get connected because they can't afford it, or they can't afford to pay the bill. So, we try to also have subsidies. There's another program that helps pay their bills too for people that are low income.
Yeah. All right. Well, here in New Jersey, we've also seen over $100 million from the American Rescue Plan. So how is that money helping and where is it going?
Well, I don't know. I don't have the list. I think this is the eighth round now of money for this connectivity fund that's going to various libraries and schools around the state. And I think there's going to be another round, but I don't have the specific towns where it went. But most communities have benefited from it. And a lot of the libraries in particular have to, so that they can connect students.
Right, right. Yeah, libraries, they do provide so much. Even just the other night, our library was opened as a warming station because part of our town lost power. But let's talk a little bit about infrastructure. A bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed just hours before President Biden was expected to arrive.
Amazing.
So talk about the timing of infrastructure. I mean, this is New Jersey. We've got a lot of old bridges and roads. They are in need of repair. So what projects do you see coming our way, or that you hope that will be coming our way?
Well, there was a bipartisan infrastructure bill that was signed by the president in November, and it includes bridge funding, it includes funding for roads, it includes funding to clean up Superfund sites, also to provide for better and safer drinking water and for sewage treatment plants. All these infrastructures, I mean, basically, whether it's transportation, water, whatever, they've all suffered and not really had enough of funding over the last 10, 20 years to upgrade. And so this bipartisan infrastructure bill was a 5-year plan to try to upgrade a lot of these things, right? So the bridges one example. Last week, actually yesterday, I was in Old Bridge talking about the Army Corps projects. For these are a lot of the towns after Sandy and other hurricanes, had flooding. And so we have flood control projects, dredging, beach replenishment, just to mention that. And we also announced a whole round of cleanup for Superfund sites. So all of this is designed to try to upgrade the infrastructure. Infrastructure is a very broad term, obviously, but bridges are an important part of it. Oh, and this money will also be used for the Gateway Tunnel, which, as you know, is long overdue to build the Gateway Tunnel. So that's part of it too.
All right. And you touched on a Superfund site, and I know as a congressman, you've talked a lot about the environment over the years. You're a big supporter of offshore wind. So
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about why that is beneficial and where it is? Because you get a lot of pushback.
We do, and it's unfortunate because really there shouldn't be any. In New Jersey, unlike say the West or the Great Plains, most of the wind that's powerful is offshore. So if you wanted to put a windmill on land in New Jersey, probably wouldn't be much good. But offshore, there's a lot of wind. And so that's why the whole emphasis has been offshore. I mean, there's some, fishermen and others that are concerned that when you put up these large windmills, that they're going to interfere with, the fishing habitat. But I mean, generally speaking, when I talk to fishermen, I mean, you can put these things up. They're not really, you really don't see it because the further you go out, the stronger the wind is. So most of these you wouldn't even see from the shore, and they're not really a problem. And also the other aspect of it is trying to cut back on greenhouse gases with climate change, because the coal and the natural gas, when they burn, they put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that warms the planet. So part of this is because we have a huge energy reserve offshore, but also because we want to cut back on pollution that causes the warming of the area and the storms and all the things that go with that.
How likely is that to become a reality? Because we've talked about it for many years, and I know it seems to come up time and again, and then something like a pandemic happens, and then we aren't able to talk about some of the other issues and initiatives and where they are in their timeline. So do you have a timeline that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the next few years, you will see a lot of these. The federal government just announced, the week or two ago that they're moving ahead with the leasing. The governor has, put investments up front to build a new port facility for windmills for construction in South Jersey on the Delaware. And, I think that at the federal and state level, everybody's working together to try to move this along. So, yeah, I think in the next few years, you actually will see, some of the windmills actually being constructed and used. It also creates jobs, for the state too, not only in placing the windmills out there, but building the windmills and the ports. And, all of this is a huge generator of jobs for the state.
All right, well, let's shift gears and talk a little politics. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer has announced that he's going to be retiring, and that gives President Biden his first Supreme Court pick. So what type of justice do you think the president will pick? Someone a little bit more liberal, middle of the road? What are you thinking? What are you hoping to see?
Well, I am concerned that the Supreme Court has moved too far to the right, with so many of the judges that have been appointed by the Republicans. Now, Breyer, as you know, was a Democratic appointment, so his replacement will be. And I am hoping that, we have somebody that's more progressive. There's a lot at stake, obviously, women's reproductive rights, voting rights. I mean, so many things that are sort of fundamental to the country that are at stake here. So I do think that we need to have a judge that's very much in sync with Justice Breyer, who I greatly admire.
And do you think that it should also, because we've heard reports that it may be a woman, it may be a woman of color. How important do you think that is?
Well, it's important. I mean, the president, I believe, has said that he'd like to have a woman of color. And I mean, that'd be great. But I think the most important thing is that it be someone who is in the Breyer tradition, who is more progressive and who's going to stand up for women's rights, for voting rights. And, in some ways, after January 6th, I mean, our democracy is at stake, and we have to have a Supreme Court that understands that.
All right. Well, Congressman, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today on so many topics, and hope to have you back.
Thank you, Laura.
Staying in Monmouth County, let's bring in State Senator Declan O'Scanlon, a Republican who represents New Jersey's 13th legislative district. Senator, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good to have you here. So let's start with the governor's emergency powers. Now, he extended the emergency powers earlier this year. You've been vocal, a very vocal critic of the governor's emergency powers and mandates. So what can the legislature do to limit a governor's powers and be a part of that bigger conversation and governing process?
Well, first off, and that is what needs to happen, right? The framers of our Constitution, our national and our state constitutions, envision co-equal branches of government between the legislature, the executive, and the judicial. We don't have that in New Jersey. 49 other states have a greater, a more balanced relationship between their legislatures and their governors. It's time New Jersey moved in that direction as well. So I have a bill, as 1200 is the new number of it, that will do just that. It is fair, it is balanced, and it's essentially the legislature saying, hey, we're ready to do our jobs that we haven't done for the past 2 years. So hopefully everyone will get on, and the governor will support it too. He says he wants to start working with the legislature. A great way to show that would be to sign this bill. So it has to happen. Again, 49 other states have a better balance than we do. So what we're going to do with this bill is restore that balance. It is not abusive. It's not a political document. It's a policy document that's very fair.
How likely do you think it is that he'll sign it?
I'm going to remain an optimist. If he is being honest when he says he's ready to work with the legislature, then he absolutely should sign it. If not, then he's being disingenuous when he suggests that he's ready to start working with the legislature. So I'm going to remain an optimist and faithful in the governor's sincerity when he says that he's ready to work with us.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the new Senate leadership. Stephen Sweeney is out as Senate president, and Nick Scutari, he is in as Senate president. The leaders, it's still obviously under Democratic control. So do you anticipate any big changes in terms of what legislation is getting posted for a vote and what makes it through the process?
Look, every leader has his different style, has his different priorities. So we're going to see a change. And I got along very well with Steve Sweeney. We work very well together. I am thrilled that we have an extra Republican in the caucus, but I'm sad to see Steve go. Those are not mutually exclusive feelings to have. Nick Scutari is great. He's already demonstrating good leadership skills, which I knew he would. He's a good friend as well. But yeah, there will be differences. I'm hopeful that there's things we can get done. I'm hoping we don't lose focus. Steve had a focus on helping the developmentally disabled, for instance. I'm hoping that focus doesn't go anywhere, and I'm going to work to make sure it doesn't. But yeah, it's going to be a new era. And it isn't just the change in leadership. I think my friends on the other side of the aisle got sent and received a message from the voters that they have to give a damn about what the voters are saying. They can't act in a vacuum. And I'm hopeful that we will see more of that. So I'm remaining optimistic.
You just brought up something. I'm going to jump ahead. Actually, something I was going to bring up later in the show, but I'm going to bring it up now. Is you talked about how Steve Sweeney was very interested in helping the developmentally disabled. Now you have a bill that would actually give those with communications issues, people on the autism spectrum, the option of being able to put that on their driver's license. Now I have children with special needs, so teens. So when I saw this, I'm thinking, because I've watched a lot of stuff on the news and people overreacting, and I'm thinking that child could be on the spectrum and they're just having a reaction. So that kind of tugged at my heartstrings, thinking, "Ooh, wow, what is this?" But I'll let you explain it. So can you talk a little bit about that legislation that you're proposing that would give those with autism spectrum disorder the ability to put that on or note it on their driver's license?
Yeah, and look, we've seen this, right? We've seen. First off, we have the best trained police officers in the world here. They're great guys, and women as well. Yet there are scenarios where they interface with someone who may have developmental disabilities or autism, and who doesn't react the way a police officer might expect in an encounter. Well, we know that can spiral into a damaging encounter. If a police officer is thinking someone's being obstinate rather than simply having their own emotional reaction to the encounter, it's a problem. One of the first things an officer does is ask for driver's license and insurance. If during that handoff, either with a notation on the license or another separate card, if the police know to look for it, and they can know right away that this person isn't being difficult, they're just having their own difficulties and they have their own way of communicating. Letting an officer know that right away, early in a stop, can avoid things going south inadvertently and for no reason. And that's what we want to do. So our original legislation would have permitted a notation right on the driver's license. The MVC had some concerns with that, so we came up with a compromise, which is, I think, another card or a thing to attach to it. Either way, the message is going to get through, and it's a brilliant idea that came to me from it came to us because Tony Bucco actually was first to the table with it. But I think the same constituent talked to both of us, and it's good law, and I'm hoping it will get signed into law.
Right, because things can easily spiral because of a misunderstanding, because certain individuals with this disorder, their mind is thinking one way, and it looks like defiance, and it is not. It is a medical condition. The concern I think some might have is, could this make those on the spectrum more a victim, or could they, if that is on there, if they have to show an ID, with their vaccine card or something, and they don't, necessarily want that, is there a safeguard in there to protect those?
Well, look, you hope that no one would use the knowledge that someone has autism or some other developmental disabilities to abuse them or take advantage of them. But this is totally voluntary. And there's no way for us to, if this is going to be notated on a license, it's there. I don't think so. I think that if anything, anyone seeing that would expand their tolerance and their openness and their understanding. So I would hope it'd be big net positive and that you wouldn't have anyone try to take advantage. And I'll remain hopeful there, but we have no way to take care of the more pressing problem without opening up that possibility, I guess. But I'm going to have some faith in humanity and hope that will not be a frequent occurrence, or maybe ever. hopefully.
Right. And it is voluntary, so it is not something that is forced. If you do not want to, you do not have to, but you're making it there to where it is an option. All right, so I could talk about this one all day, but we are going to move on because affordability in New Jersey, it is a huge issue. And where does most of our taxpayer dollar goes? It goes to education. Mine goes to fighting the child study team, but that's another story. But you sponsored a bill, became law, and it's talking about districts to consolidate. Now, I live in South Hunterdon Regional School District, and they consolidated, and depending on how you talk to, it's been great, it's been not great, it's so can you tell us how this law would impact schools, could impact schools and taxpayers?
Okay, so what we're looking for is to get out of the way of school districts. We have over 600 of them. People regularly, rightly complain that that's a lot of administration. It's a lot of redundancy. And frequently you have with these separate small school districts, typically, you have districts that can't provide enrichment programs, music, other things. So you have both increased costs frequently that you might be able to shave, and you also have educational opportunities that don't happen when you have some of these smaller, more remote districts. So what we're trying to do is get the system out of the way of districts that want to try to explore merging.
Well, can I stop you there just really quickly? Do you have towns who are saying, hey, listen, we really want to do this, or are you just putting it out there so the tools are available should a district want to? Because, people talk about consolidating until it comes to theirs, and then they say, well, but I like my school. I like my town hall. Consolidating services means we might have to have a big one, and we kind of like our little one, but New Jersey's a home rule state.
And there's nothing in this bill that would mandate consolidation. I am against that. So I'm for this bill. A big part of why I'm for it is because there are no mandates. This simply gets the system out of the way for those who want to explore this. And it paves the way. So it removes obstacles. It helps with things like reconciling contracts, which can always be a complication that even if schools want to merge, that can stop it. Stop the process, and it provides money for the studies that have to be done in order to know all the answers to decide whether proceeding is a good idea or not. So it really gets the system out of the way of those that want to explore it and out of the way of those that want to implement it. It does not mandate it at all. So for those that want to take advantage and where it makes sense to both save money and provide a more robust educational experience, it permits that to happen. And we do have districts. I think there's almost 70 districts have expressed interest in possibly doing this. So there's real interest in it. It won't make sense everywhere. You have plenty of districts that are kind of already at a sweet spot of size. And that's fine. But there are many small districts, sometimes next to larger ones that they can join with, that where it really makes sense. You also have a continuation of curriculum. Right now, you have plenty of K through 8 districts sending to high schools that they're not coordinating curriculum as well as they could, and as well as they would if they formed into a K through 12 district, for instance. You'd have much better coordination. You'd have much better sharing of teachers as well. So you can move resources around to make sure that if you have particularly large classes in one area or another, you can split them up. If you have an area where there's a teacher with a small class, it would give a lot more flexibility in a lot of these districts. So huge amount of advantages. And we are just paving the way to permit districts that want to explore this to be able to do it, and that then want to implement to be able to do that as well.
Now, is this part of a bigger picture when it comes to reforming school funding? Because we hear a lot about people wanting to overhaul education funding. Is this part of that, or is this just something separate altogether when it just comes to consolidating services?
Well, it's thematically, it's part of it, but they're not tied together. We definitely should take a look at our school funding formula. Jack Ciardelli ran on that, and it resonated with people. The funding formula as it is now is not fair to so many districts. Look, we need to take we need to take care of the disadvantaged kids in this state and take good care of them, make sure they have access to quality education. But at the same time, we need to be fair to taxpayers. So we definitely do need to look at our school funding formula and look at overhauling that to make it more fair. Separate issue, but one that's also important.
I mean, the kids, they are our future. Or as my dad said, they're the ones picking out our nursing homes one day. So we have to.
They're the ones that will be taking care of us. So we need to take good care of them. That's right.
They will. Well, Senator, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on all of these issues. And we hope you come back on and talk a little bit more and give us some updates as the year goes on.
I look forward to it anytime. Thanks for having me.
Senator Declan O'Scanlon, thank you so much. And we thank you so much for watching this edition of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I'm Laura Jones, and we hope to see you back here next week. Next week on New Jersey Politics, we meet the state's new Senate President, Senator Nick Scutari, a Democrat from the 22nd Legislative District. We'll be learning about his approach to running the state Senate and what type of bills we might see posted for a vote in the upcoming session.
Well, I think a couple of the things that we've already started working on is the affordability to live in the state of New Jersey, property tax relief, cost relief, making things more affordable for the people of the state of New Jersey. Secondly, I'd like to slow down the legislative process. I think that we do a lot of great things, but people either don't know about it or we rush things.
Then, Republican State Senator Anthony Bucco will be discussing Governor Phil Murphy's vaccine mandates and what Republicans say they're going to do to ensure the legislature is more involved when a crisis happens.
Our Republican caucus has asked for the hearings. We've asked for subpoena power. We want to delve into this issue. And unfortunately, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle just haven't seemed to want to go down that road. And it's a shame.
Join us next weekend on New Jersey Politics, Saturday at 6:30 a.m. and Sunday at 8:30 a.m.